Here we go. Hello out there. We're on the air. Are we on the air? Yes, it looks like it. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. Thank God we got to be alive during this time in history. Good morning, YouTube. Good morning, Rumble. Good morning, everybody listening, watching later on. Glad to have you here today. It is Friday. It is the Bitcoin journey, the daily Bitcoin journey, actionable and logical discussion for Bitcoiners and for future Bitcoiners. Nice to see some friendly faces in the chat today. Always nice. Johnny, good morning. Let's kick some ass today. Crypto Heathens in the house. Daniel. Miss V Fud, TGIF. Rock and roll. Good morning, wonderful Bitcoiners. Bitcoin is going to eat gold alive. It's coming for gold. Coming fast for gold. Then it's coming for real estate. And we're going to be here for the entire show. Hopefully. Hopefully we get to live through it. The transition. Sachi's in the house. Good morning. My fellow Manitoban. And Robert. It's a nice way to start the show this morning. Good morning. Just started watching your channel. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I appreciate the comment and I appreciate you being here. Let's lead with that. I appreciate everybody who's been showing up. When I first started doing the show back in November, I was going to wait a couple weeks to try to map everything out, try to get everything perfect. And I just said, fuck it. We're going to start tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. We're going to start it early enough so that nobody's in the chat. I can just do a show and maybe people can watch it later if they're interested. Anyways, there's a couple people in the chat that morning. People have been showing up every day since, and we've had a pretty good run. But the crazy thing about that is that this thing hasn't even started yet. The halving is in less than 2 months. And I mean, we've doubled in terms of price, in terms of US dollars, we've doubled in the last year. But we're still, as Odell says, the game has not even started yet. These next 2 years are going to be batshit. MT Mooner. No, that's not right. M Tuner won. Got $50 worth of Bitcoin. Great trade. That's the only thing we're trading on this show is fake dollars for Bitcoin. And Robert is a fellow Canadian. Good to see. I think the analytics for this show are mostly Canadian, US, but there's quite a few people from around the world who watch. I don't know how they must speak English, obviously, but I was very surprised to see the amount of people from South Korea who watch the show. So shout out to South Korea. I'm sure they'd be ahead, I think. So they're probably eating some dinner right now. Anyways, good morning, everybody else. We do have some Baileys in the coffee. I'm going to start today's show with 3 things, 3 ways to have the best Friday of your life today. Number 1, you're already here. Number 1, the Bitcoin journey. Number 2, add some Baileys to your coffee. I put a little bit too much in today. You know when you go to pour it and then all of a sudden a big pour comes out? That's what happened. Anyways, I wasn't too mad about it. And number 3, turn on, remember that search, go to your Spotify or your Apple Music, however you listen to music, and listen to the Remember the Titans movie soundtrack today. Guaranteed will put you in a really good mood today. That's what I was listening to before the show. Some really good oldies on there, some very old songs like 50s, 60s. Just really good upbeat. If you want to get in a good mood, remember the Titans. There you go. That's it for today. Have a good day, everybody. Psych. We're going to do a free ad this morning. I've been doing some ads on the Living in the Future Patreon. Been doing some ads on the course, 21-day Bitcoin journey course. But today we're talking about King Golf. Oh, we don't need to show that. That's a good looking fellow on there, but we don't need to see that. So this is King Golf. This is our company. My little brother and I started this back in 2019. We've been doing it ever since. Our main product is custom leather head covers. So if you're a golfer, if you're a business owner, you can customize, put your logo on there, or you can just get one. Where's a good one here? There's a Bitcoin one. Believe that or not. Pay me in Bitcoin. So they're genuine leather head covers. They're all made right here in Manitoba. Very reasonably priced. We got some competition in Canada, and their prices are about double ours. I won't say their name. They make really good stuff too, but ours are very high quality, all genuine leather and all made by hand here in Manitoba. So if you're a golfer or if you're not, we got something for everybody, because this apparel, as you can see here, you can wear it on the golf course or just for shits and gigs. Very comfy hoodies, very high quality. And our hats are probably our best selling item, honestly. This is a King hat. So there you go. There's an ad for King Golf this morning, kinggolf.ca. And we accept Bitcoin. So if you find anything on the site, you can send me an email. You can find an email on the website or send me an email, 88sats@proton. And we can set up a nice little price. We do offer a discount for paying in Bitcoin. So there you go. I am not a leathersmith. I wish I was. We have a lady who's been working with leather. She actually has been creating leather purses, custom leather purses, for 25 years. So she is our leathersmith. She is amazing. Her work is second to none. There's no second best behind Lucy is her name. So we just do the designs and all the sales part of it, marketing. So it's pretty good stuff if you're into that kind of thing. Good morning, Letha. Let's get to what? What are we going to get to right now? Metrics. Now I got all those Remember the Titans songs stuck in my head. God, there's some good songs on there. Block height. Oh, we just crossed a block. New block was just mined. 831,692 was just mined seconds ago. And the luck, yesterday, same as yesterday, via BTC. I remember that one from yesterday. So they got 6.556 Bitcoin for mining that block. Good for them. Fees are about average, I'd say. The last block was higher than it's been, it looks like. About 25 sats per VByte. So it's a good time to be moving Bitcoin. We're not going to be transacting on the Bitcoin layer 1 forever. We're going to be using Lightning in a few years. But for now, this is kind of cool just to see how it all works, because this is the real value of Bitcoin right here. There's a lot of really good characteristics about Bitcoin, the fixed supply, instantaneous, anywhere in the world. But this is the real value here. Proof of work. You cannot get Bitcoin unless you either buy it with your energy that you've put into getting that dollar, or you earn it. You plug in a miner, you connect to the Bitcoin network, and you start securing, verifying, and solidifying the Bitcoin network. So if you want to learn about Bitcoin, this is a really good resource. Mempool.space. The price today has dropped a little, but not much. Still $50,000, double from last year. $50,994 US dollars. Last year, about half of that. Oh, look at that. Both two 994s. 23,994. And 4 years ago, you could have purchased one Bitcoin for 9,967, $9,000. Moscow time today, which is the equivalent of $1 US. How many sats will that get you? 1,958. Here in Canada, dropped a little as well. Only $68,646 for one Bitcoin. Not that long ago, all the nerds who were into Bitcoin, they were celebrating when Bitcoin hit $1. And then they were losing their minds when Bitcoin hit $100. And now, look where we are. And like I said, we're just getting started into this whole thing. Moose Jaw time today, 1 Canadian dollar, 1 loonie. Will get you 1,454 sats. The deal of a lifetime. Okay, well, today's show, if you couldn't tell by the title, is a fairly simple one. Bitcoin only. So what does that mean? I'm going to go through about 4 or 5 things here. We're going to talk about different departments of this, different categories, what I'm talking about with Bitcoin only. But first, let's start with Donald Trump. He was on some sort of interview last night. I don't know what it was. Fox News, I think. They look familiar. But they asked him about Bitcoin. And I was going to show the clip, but I'm sure if you're on any sort of social media today, you'll be able to see the clip. But the main takeaway from that, from my view anyways, is that he went on for about a minute talking about Bitcoin. He said he loves the dollar twice, loves the dollar, but he didn't say the fiat dollar. So, I mean, most people don't really know what the fiat dollar is, but I don't know. And then he also said that he can live with Bitcoin. So we're slowly progressing here. First of all, Bitcoin seemed like a scam to him. And then I forget what he said after that, but they were both fairly negative connotations around Bitcoin. But last night, Trump said that he could live with Bitcoin. It seems to be catching on. People are embracing it, and that he can live with Bitcoin. So we've talked about it on the show, and I've actually done a full show on it, I think, at least 20 minutes talking about my theory of Trump and his relationship with Bitcoin. Pretty interesting, I think. And kind of the main thesis there was that I do think that Trump is a Bitcoiner. I don't think that he can talk about Bitcoin publicly, because if he did, he would automatically shut out every person with Trump derangement syndrome out there, which is a lot of people. So we know that Bitcoin is for everybody. Bitcoin is for enemies. And I think that, like I said, if Trump started supporting Bitcoin, that's not the idea here. Bitcoin's not just for conservatives. Bitcoin's not just for libertarians. It's for everybody. So I do think Trump owns Bitcoin. I do think he's a Bitcoiner deep down, but he can't come out and say it. And if I remember, I'll try to put the link in I actually made a short clip of it. So it's only about 6 minutes long talking about Trump. I'll try to put a link below. Only dropped a little because I bought yesterday. Isn't that the truth? I don't remember ever a time where, well, in the short term, I don't ever remember a time where I bought some Bitcoin and then it shot up after that. It always goes down. Good morning, Rick. Good morning, Bitcoiners. We need more smashing of the like, please. That's a great idea. I don't like asking for things, but I appreciate Rick doing it on my behalf. So I try not to ever ask you to like the show, subscribe to the channel. It's up to you. If you get any sort of value from it, then you can if you want to. And the only reason I say that is because I know myself personally, every time somebody on YouTube asks me to do something, I do not do that thing. So if you feel like doing it, great. If not, we're still going to be here tomorrow. But I do appreciate that, Rick, very much. Okay, so Trump's other way. Trump can live with the dollar. Let's talk about Bitcoin only. And I'm going to bring up a little spreadsheet. Everybody's favorite part of the show is the spreadsheets. I just feel like it's easier to look at. Instead of me just saying words, I feel like if we can talk about it and look at it, it's a little bit added value there. So the first one here, in terms of Bitcoin only, the first one we're going to talk about is the allocation, the investment part of this. So how much Bitcoin should you be holding? It should not be Bitcoin only. Even myself, I will admit, I don't think that everybody should just be in Bitcoin only. I don't think you should ever have all of your eggs into one basket. Even regardless of how excited you are, regardless of how much time you spent learning about Bitcoin, you have to spread yourself out a little bit. And so that's what I'm going to talk about right now. So here is my strategy. Did this up yesterday. It's very simple. But there's kind of two factors here. So age is a big one, where you're at in life, because the thing with Bitcoin, and as much as the media loves to paint it as some sort of Ponzi get rich quick scheme, that's actually the opposite of what we're doing here. So you buy Bitcoin, you get through at least one 4-year cycle, and then you reevaluate. So we're here for the very long term. So with that in mind, obviously, if you're older, you don't need as much Bitcoin because this is a very long-term hold. And so this is the weighting here that I put on it. So we got age 10 to 30. Yes, I started with age 10 because imagine if you started buying Bitcoin at age 10. I think that is the best time to be doing it. And obviously, if you're a 10-year-old, you're probably not watching this. But if you have kids who are 10 years old, I would consider starting a wallet if you haven't yet. And that's their savings account for the future. Forget the government sponsored bullshit. Go with Bitcoin. You might want a little bit of both, but definitely if you have a son, daughter, nephew, dog, get your dog a Bitcoin wallet, and then in 8 years build them a dog mansion. So that's 10 to 30. And I put 1 there because the earlier you start, the better you are in Bitcoin. So that's 100%. And these knowledge ones are just my input there. So if I change these to be 20, it would change the allocation as well. For 1, then it's going to change to exactly what that is. So let's skip that. I would say the age and the knowledge. So this is like, ask yourself out of 100 on a scale of 1 to 100, what is your Bitcoin knowledge? And that's what you enter into this. So the weighting and then the knowledge here. So let's go to 51 to 70-year-olds. So the weight I put on that was 0.6 because, like I said, the older you are, the less of an allocation to Bitcoin you should have. You should be considering things like your legacy, passing this stuff on to your kids. Obviously, you still have a lot of good years left, but if you're retired, I don't think it's the best play to be putting all of your capital into Bitcoin. So I put a 0.6 weighting on this. So let's say that somebody's 65, just retired, and their knowledge is 15 out of 100. It changes to 9. So that's kind of the idea of the weighted scale here is the based on age factor. So this is kind of my recommendation in terms of the weighted. You would fill in this knowledge yourself, but it's kind of up to you. The main thing here is that it should change based on your age and your knowledge. So if you want me to send this to you, you can just send me an email. It's very easy to make, but I know that most people aren't big fans of spreadsheets like I am. So something to consider there. In terms of what else I would be investing in, because look at these allocations, 40%, 9%. A couple things to keep in mind there is that as your Bitcoin knowledge grows, every day you watch the Bitcoin journey, every day you listen to other podcasts, you have to put in the work. And the more work that you put in, I think the more that you can start allocating to Bitcoin. So after a year, if your knowledge was 15 out of 100, and after a year it goes to 25, then you have to adjust your investment allocation accordingly. And keep in mind that this is Bitcoin self-custody. So that's why the knowledge factor plays into this, because you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what you're holding, because there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. Even in the short term, there's going to be ups and downs. In the long term, we kind of know it's going up and to the right. But you have to be able to stomach that risk, that volatility. Everybody loves saying that Bitcoin's volatile. It is. Week to week, month to month. But over the last 15 years, it's been very volatile upwards. So this is for self-custody Bitcoin. This is you buying your Bitcoin and you storing that Bitcoin on your own. I do think that in 10, 15 years from now, hardly anybody is going to be storing their own Bitcoin. So this is kind of like the early adopter phase. I don't think that everybody's going to have access to actually holding their own Bitcoin for many reasons, but the main reason is because there's only so much Bitcoin out there. And not everybody will have their own UTXO, just based on simple math of how many people there are and how many UTXOs, feasible UTXOs there are. Because, and the reason, I'm sure you've heard that before, maybe not, but the reason why everybody won't be able to have their own UTXOs is if you think about, if you moved a UTXO and say it's even a very small one for 50,000 sats, one UTXO, in 5 or 10 years from now, it might cost you 70,000 sats to move that, depending on how the fees are. But that's kind of the idea there, is that if you have a very small UTXO in the future, it's just not going to be feasible to be transacting on layer one, because that whole thing is going to get swallowed up by fees. So that's kind of the idea there. Historically, there's a dip before halving. Yes. Combine that with Genesis liquidation, and here we are. I wouldn't say that this is a dip. I think that but I do agree, Daniel, every time there's been a halving, there's been a very big dip before the halving. And so with that, I talked about this last week, but I don't know if it's going to happen this time. That's just my logic there, based on all the demand for it right now. But never underestimate the powers that be, the people who are in charge. If they want to crash the price of Bitcoin, they can. And I think that there's probably still some people out there who don't have the full scope of what Bitcoin is, and they might be very quick to sell that Bitcoin. So I don't think it's going to happen, but we have to, as yesterday's show was all about, expect the unexpected. And it might be a good idea here. I'm not going to say this isn't financial advice, because I'm saying it on a live show. So it might be a good idea, if you do have any altcoins, don't sell your Bitcoin right now. But if you do have any altcoins that you could trade in for a USDT or a USDC, and just kind of wait for the next 2 months, just wait for a bit of a dip. And if not, go buy yourself something nice, or buy Bitcoin anyways. But now is probably the time to sell some of those altcoins. If you have one that's been kind of running up lately, trade it for USDT and wait for the potential crash. There's my advice. Good morning, Nimlord. Did you get your Bull Bitcoin set up yesterday? It's quite the profile pic too. It looks like a rooster head with a bee on it. I like it. Rockroll says everyone needs to go through 1 4-year cycle. Absolutely. You'll learn more holding Bitcoin on your own in a 4-year cycle than you would in a 4-year university degree. I guarantee you that, because I can speak from experience with that. For anybody who's new to the show, I'm talking about these investment allocations. I'm not a certified financial planner. I'm not a CFP. I have 0 credentials behind my name. I went to university, college, and I took my CPA program, but none of that really. School's for fools. Going to school does not make you smart. It makes you well trained for the system. Let's just say that. So I do have some financial background, but I'm not a financial planner. So keep that in mind. And if you want to sue me, I don't know. My assets are in pretty good private places. So your lawyer might not be able to find them very well. But okay, so set up the Bull Bitcoin, funded the account, but they ID you at Canada. Really? That's new. I've definitely never been ID'd at my small town Canada Post, but cities might be different. Okay, let's keep things moving here. Bitcoin only. This next one's going to be, the category is Zapvertising. Have you heard of that? I don't know. So with the show, the channel is growing at a very good pace right now. And so probably in the next couple months or less, I might start reaching out to a few Bitcoin companies that I support, that I've used, and that I align with. So I'm going to be looking for some sponsors on this show, and I'm not saying that to you, but what I am going to propose in the meantime is, before that, I want Bitcoin only advertisements. So this is how it's going to work. If you're somebody out there who has a business, or if you're somebody out there who has a product or a service or anything, and you want to get your word out there to Bitcoiners, this is the deal. Or if you just have a message you want to share with everybody, whatever it is, this is the deal. So for the next couple months, assuming in the meantime, before anything crazy happens, I'm going to be taking the top zap every day, and we're going to read that on the show. So we might go a little while without anything coming in, but I think it's just a very good way, very cost-effective way to get your message out there. Because there are, I don't know the total views across the channels and the podcast and everything, but it's a fair size, and it's Bitcoiners, and that's the kind of the clientele that you want, I think, if you're here. So that's going to be the deal going forward, is the top zap is going to get, we're going to read it on the show every day. So you got 3 ways to do that. And because it's so cheap, your end of the deal is that you actually have to put in a little bit of work here. Easy work, but still work. So the first option you can do is using the Fountain app. If you download the Fountain app, you find the daily Bitcoin journey on there, and you can do something called a boost. So you're going to connect that Fountain wallet to your Lightning wallet of Satoshi, or whatever you use, and you can send a boost. And with that boost, you can send a message. So that's where you can say whatever you want about your business, where people can find you, anything you want. World's your oyster. So that's the first one. You can send a boost on Fountain. Number 2 is you can just send me a zap on wallet of Satoshi. So in the description here below, there's my wallet of Satoshi address. It's kinggolf, KNG golf at walletofsatoshi.com. Send a zap, and even with those, you can send a message with that as well. And number 3 is NOSTR. If you send me a zap or get a hold of me on NOSTR, send me a zap on there. We'll read it on the show. So that my NOSTR address, also my NPub, is in the description below. So there's 3 ways to do it. If you have a business to advertise, whatever you want, that's what I'm throwing out there for everybody. And it could be anything. It could be 100 sats, but the thing is, it's going to be the top zap every day. So if you put 100 sat zap out there and then somebody goes to 1,000, we're just going to read the top one. So there you go. Any questions? Let me know. But you do have to, there's a little bit of proof of work involved there. You have to set up one of those, either Fountain, wallet of Satoshi, or NOSTR. And we're going to start reading those on the show every day. Pretty good value there, I think. Here's a question from Robert. We'll break the show up here a little bit. What are your thoughts on using DeFi as an investment tool to acquire more Bitcoin after all the registered accounts are maxed out? Well, as I said, I'm not an investment advisor, certified. I have done this before. I have traded. I've done swing trading before. So with swing trading, basically what you do is you buy one crypto and Bitcoin. And every time the values of those 2 things swing, you swap them. And then you slowly just start swapping your way up to accrue more Bitcoin. This is what I would say on that. It's not easy to do. It requires I wouldn't say a ton of time, but a ton of patience, because you have to factor in the fees on every time. Even though one side goes up, you have to have enough of a cushion there to make it work, because every time you do an exchange there, you lose some fees. You have to pay some fees every time you exchange it. So you have to factor that into it. You have to be very patient. And the other thing I'd say with that is that if you are going to be doing something like that, whether you're using DeFi or you're using swing trade, take a very small percentage of your Bitcoin. So we talked about, kind of a strategy for spending your Bitcoin in the future, in terms of having a nice little cold storage wallet there with 90 96, 97% of your Bitcoin in there. And then you have 3% that you can kind of spend if you want to during the bull runs. And I would say the same for that kind of stuff. If you want to put 2-3% into DeFi or swing trading, it is a good way to accrue more Bitcoin. There's more risk there. You probably will, if you're a taxpayer, you have to pay tax on those every time you sell it. Whether you do it or not, that's not up to me. But there are things that are involved there. So seems easy. It seems simple. And that's kind of one of the things I want to warn here. Oh shit, I got to find that. Okay, I forgot to do this. Good thing I saw this early. Sorry, I got something to talk about here in terms of crypto in the next 10 minutes. So I got to make sure that I have this ready to go. So give me one quick minute here. And I would keep talking, but I'm a very poor multitasker. So we might have some silence here for a sec. Okay, so that's sent. I'll talk about crypto more in a little bit because that is part of the Bitcoin only show here, is talking about crypto. So we'll save that for them. Knowledge multiplier. Without knowledge, your hand will be too weak to hodl. Exactly. Knowledge is the key to Bitcoin. You cannot just, that's the thing with it. That's the beauty of Bitcoin. Because if you think about all the different corporations out there right now, they all know what's going on in Bitcoin. They can see it. They're not idiots. These people are very smart for the most part. A lot of dummies out there as well. But for the most part, the people in charge of these large institutions are pretty intelligent. So they know what's happening in Bitcoin right now. The problem is they can't buy Bitcoin because they don't have the knowledge. They don't have the teams in place to be able to properly store that Bitcoin. And they need approval from their shareholders, board of directors. But that is part of it. You cannot just go out and buy Bitcoin. You can have as much money as you want. You still have to find a way to buy it. You have to be able to stomach the risk. There's a lot involved. So knowledge is a big part of how much you should be allocating to Bitcoin. The lady behind the counter asked for ID. This is a bull Bitcoin story. Tried to distract her, but she was adamant with seeing my ID. So I quickly showed it and funded the voucher. I wonder what the purpose of that would be. Because you wouldn't have put your name on the bull Bitcoin account if you were doing a non-KYC option there. That's interesting. Maybe next time I'm in town, I'll try to buy some at the post office and see what happens, and I'll report back. What's next here? So that's the Zapvertising. The next one here is resources. So one thing to consider here, if you're new to Bitcoin, or if you're not, at any stage in Bitcoin, this is pretty important, I think, because you have to know the difference between Bitcoin and crypto, and not only the difference there, but the difference in how those companies would operate. Because a company who is an exchange or has a product or a wallet, if their 100% focus is on Bitcoin, I guarantee you that is going to be a much superior product to the other ones. And I don't want to get too technical in terms of how the wallets work, how the secure elements work within those wallets. It's just logic. If you're 100% focused on one thing, Bitcoin, instead of trying to keep up with every new coin that's coming out and adding that to your wallet and adding the different chains on top of that and how it all connects, I think that you should be focused on companies, products, and wallets that are Bitcoin only for that reason. Because you're putting a lot into this. You're putting your life's energy into this. And you don't want to fuck this up. So in Canada here, the only exchange currently that is Bitcoin only is Bull Bitcoin. So that's who I always suggest on here. I strayed away from ShakePay. ShakePay also has Ethereum, which hopefully they'll be getting rid of soon after some blowback from the users, but bull Bitcoin. So if you're in Canada, if you want to start buying Bitcoin with a company that is exclusive to Bitcoin, there's a link below for, I think you get $20. So you can use it or not. It's up to you. I mean, I've never turned down $20 in my life for free, especially if you can buy Bitcoin with that. So that's one option in Canada. In the US, there's River and there's Swan. Based on my experience in Bitcoin, from listening, from observing, I would go with River there. I'm very mixed on Swan. I think the leadership of Swan, there's some weirdness there for sure. There's some things that have happened with Corey in the recent months. So if I was choosing between River and Swan, I would go with River. Just my opinion. In the UK, you have an exchange called CoinFloor. I'm not familiar with it, but they are a Bitcoin only exchange. And in Australia, you got two options there. Bitaroo. That's a very Australian name. Bitaroo or PayBTC. So that's what I dug up in terms of exchanges that are only Bitcoin. And like I said, just think logically with this. If you have an exchange that's only focused on Bitcoin, they don't worry about, the reason why FTX happened is because they basically invented a coin, their own coin, FTT. They just use that to generate more income, selling fake bullshit back and forth, and showing a profit there when really they were holding zero Bitcoin. So with these exchanges that are Bitcoin only, you're going to have a lot more conviction in terms of that they're doing business properly, in my opinion. So that is something to consider for sure. With wallets, the wallets that I would suggest for somebody who's out there, the mobile wallets. Number one, Phoenix. Phoenix has Lightning and on-chain. Number two, Wallet of Satoshi. Great wallet. Unfortunately, it's not available in the US anymore, but Wallet of Satoshi is a very good wallet, Bitcoin only. Number three is Moon Wallet, MUUN. This one I'm not 100% sold on. I still use it quite often. But if I had to choose between those three in terms of a Bitcoin only wallet, I would be going with Phoenix. And for desktop wallets, Sparrow. Sparrow or bust. Don't consider anything else. These are for Bitcoin. So if you're somebody out there who does hold some cryptos in there as well, number one, don't ever mix that with your Bitcoin. So if you have Bitcoin and you have a bunch of altcoins, make sure that you separate your Bitcoin, move it all into a wallet like Phoenix, and just leave it there. Get your 12-word backup phrase. That's your golden goose here. You can play with whatever you want, small percentage of it, but stick to Bitcoin only wallets for your Bitcoin. And then you could use a wallet like Exodus for your other stuff, but don't ever mix your Bitcoin and your altcoins. That's just my opinion on it. Some comments here. We'll take a little breather. Sometimes I get talking too fast, run out of breath. Well, I should say thanks to Robert. You're welcome. M Tuner. Bitcoin is my biggest bag. Before I dove down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and learned that preserving my wealth, energy, time, instead of letting dollars be inflated away into infinity. I thought Litecoin had its use for payments and Bitcoin for storing wealth. I do like Litecoin. And there's probably going to be some Bitcoiners out there who don't like hearing that, but that's okay. Here's what I would say on that though. Right now, today, based on the halving coming up, everything that's coming up, I would be holding zero Litecoin and all Bitcoin. If down the road, when Bitcoin runs, you want to shave off a small percentage of that and buy some Litecoin. But Bitcoin's always the first to move. Bitcoin is going to be the one that really sets itself apart this bull run, I think, just based on all the capital that's flowing into Bitcoin right now. There's no capital flowing into Litecoin. There's no capital flowing into Dogecoin. All the big boys are chasing Bitcoin. So I do think that this cycle is going to be the one where Bitcoin really decouples from everything else. So once that happens, you could buy a couple Litecoin, because I do think that Litecoin is solid. I think that it will be used for payments in certain countries, and it is a very efficient way to transact. So you're probably onto something there. I wouldn't advise buying it right now, but down the road, I think the Litecoin's time will come. We're just not there yet. Daniel moved from Swan to River based on the same vibe. Attaboy. I like that. And it seems like a lot of Bitcoiners recently are starting to do that. I don't know. The thing that I heard is that the ownership, like the people, not the front faces of Swan, like Corey is the front face of Swan, but the people behind the scenes, the actual owners of Swan, I haven't heard great things about them. Basically, the rulers of the old system started Swan. And I mean, they are a Bitcoin only company. It seems like they're doing some really good things. But if I had the choice between Swan and River, I'm going with River. Where's Bitcoin Well, Jason? Is that in Canada? I feel like that's the same as Bull Bitcoin Owner. I'm not sure. And this is a great point from Daniel. I think that Strike should be in the conversation. You can do direct deposit and put some or all of your paycheck into Bitcoin. That's Mahler's company, right? Strike. I do love Jack. So I would be definitely on board for Strike if it was available here in Canada. What's your opinion on stablecoins on the BTC Liquid? Honestly, I've never used them before. Liquid Network is something that I do want to get into this year. I think that there is a lot of potential there. I like the setup of it. I think that I was somebody who heard some things about Liquid that kind of turned me off of it. And so I didn't do any of my own research on it at all. I just kind of trusted what I had heard. But in the last couple months, I've heard that kind of swing in the other direction. It seems like people are, especially in a high fee environment, if you're holding some of your Bitcoin on Liquid, very good idea. So I cannot comment in terms of my opinion on it, but it is something that I'm going to be looking into in the future. And then so that's the wallets. We're kind of jumping everywhere here, but that's okay. It's Friday. And then the devices. So there's the seed signer. I think that that's Bitcoin only. I've never used that before. And there's the cold card. And I want to hang on, leave some silence there after the cold card. Because if you're putting this much effort, this much energy, this much capital into Bitcoin, you have to pay very close attention to how it's being stored. And in my opinion, cold card is by far the best option for that. So there's people in it's actually a Canadian company too, CoinKite. NVK, I'm a big fan of him. Hopefully, maybe the show will be sponsored by Cold Card one day, but for now it's not. This is just my experience with Cold Card. But if you are serious about Bitcoin, you should be getting a Cold Card. Regardless of what country you're in, Cold Card is number one. So if you want to, I think that there's a lot of people who have gotten into Cold Card during this last year, just after everything that's happened with Ledger, Trezor. There's a lot of issues there. And like I said, if you're putting this much effort, energy, capital into Bitcoin, you don't want to be holding it on something like a Trezor or a Ledger. It's just way too much risk, way too much risk. So get a cold card. If you need any help with that, find a way to get in touch with me. Bitcoinjourney.ca has all my contact information on there. And I've done multi-signature on cold card. I'm very familiar with it. So if you just want somebody there to hold your hand through the process and help you figure out what you need, order it, and then we can just sit on a call for an hour or an hour and a half, I can definitely do that for you. So that's kind of my, out of all this, that would be my number one thing to pay attention to, is the device that you're storing it on. If you're somebody who has a Trezor or a Ledger, I would strongly consider getting a cold card and moving it off of there as soon as you possibly can. And one thing in terms of that, one thing you have to keep in mind is that as we go through these next couple of years, 2024, 2025, people's Bitcoin, there's going to be a large amount of people out there who have some Bitcoin. And that value right now might be $200, $500, $1,000. And so they're still paying attention to it, but it's not valuable enough for them to really give a shit. They might be holding it on a ledger. They might be holding it on the exchange still. But as this happens here over these next couple of years, as we go through this next bull cycle, it's going to be worth a lot more. It's going to be much more valuable. And there's going to be a ton of people who are trying to get their hands on a cold card. And I don't know how much inventory NVK has, but he's going to need a lot of it. So instead of waiting for that to happen, instead of trying to get through the same door as everybody else while the building's on fire, go now. Get yourself set up, get ahead of it, and you might thank me later. So that is kind of the resources in terms of Bitcoin only, the wallets, the exchanges, the devices. Stick to those. Okay, and this last one here, I'll bring this up if I can find it. Where are we here? So this was I was kind of doing a bit of organizing the other day around the office, and I came across this old drawing that I did. And I don't know if my buddy Chrysler is watching today or not, but this is the diagram that I sent him about a year ago now, probably. And we were talking about the difference between Bitcoin and crypto, because I think this might have been right after the FTX or soon after. And people were still within the financial industry, still very tied to FTX. And I said that if you had Bitcoin through that whole FTX debacle, if you had Bitcoin stored properly in your own possession, in your own custody, you were not affected by that. Other than the price went down for a little while, but you still had your Bitcoin. You had the exact same amount of sats. So this is what I sent him. And I posted this on NOSTR the other day, and it got some good traction. So I wanted to share it with everybody here. Hopefully you can see it. No, can't zoom. Oh yeah, there we go. So this is my drawing here of Bitcoin versus crypto. So I don't know if you can see it or not. If you're watching on a phone, you might not be able to, but we're going to go through one at a time here quickly. So Bitcoin uses proof of work. Crypto, for the most part, uses proof of stake. There are some cryptos that use proof of work as well, but for the most part, Bitcoin uses proof of work. And that's key. We talked about that at the start of the show. Proof of work is the key. Because we've lived in a world where there was no proof of work. There was zero proof of work. If our governments want to print money today, they can. Without our votes, without our approval, and we've seen it over these last 4 years. And since 2009, I think the US debt went from 10 trillion to $34 trillion. And the reason for that is because there's zero proof of work there. Since 1971, when the US went off the gold standard, governments now have the ability to print money. And when you give somebody the ability to print money, they're going to do it. And that's exactly what's happening in our world right now. That's why everything costs so much money, is because our governments, our banks have been printing like crazy. I was going to say something else, but we'll just go with crazy. So proof of work is the key. With proof of work, you actually need to put energy into it. You cannot just create things out of thin air. With crypto, most cryptos, it might as well just be fiat. And if you look at, if you have some time today, go to a website called WTF Happened in 1971. And you can see what's happened to our society since we went off the gold standard. But now we have Bitcoin. Gold would probably be the closest thing to proof of work, aside from Bitcoin. But you actually have to put energy into creating them. It requires energy to create. Crypto does not. Bitcoin has a fixed supply. It has a known supply, and it has a shrinking supply. 21 million max, and every 4 years, that new supply gets cut in half. With crypto, and with our dollar, it's a mostly infinite supply. There's an unknown future supply, and there's no schedule or maximum amount. And look at these nice drawings. Somebody on NOSTR said that this looks like a cat's ass. Centralized network looks like a cat's butthole. So Bitcoin is decentralized. There's a bunch of different nodes. Me and you are just nodes. That's all we are in the Bitcoin network. But there are people who are actually running a Bitcoin node. And that's the decentralized aspect of Bitcoin. And so if there's a country out there who wants to stop Bitcoin, they can. But that's going to have no impact on Bitcoin. They're just going to pick up and move somewhere else. So it's very decentralized. You cannot shut down Bitcoin because it's so decentralized. With crypto, with fiat, most of them are very centralized. So there's a CEO, there's a company, there's somebody in charge of the distribution of those coins. Any crypto, pick one. There's a CEO. There's probably a board of directors. There's a team there. With Bitcoin, there's no CEO. There's nobody that you can call at Bitcoin and complain about your transaction fees. There's nobody. And up until the ETFs, there was no marketing company behind Bitcoin either. But we have that. And the last important differentiator here is a commodity, Bitcoin, and a security, crypto. So a couple things to note on that. Number one, a commodity. It's going to have different tax implications than a security. So with a commodity, I think that this will really impact, and I think that most countries will actually make this legal tender in the future. El Salvador already has. So one thing to keep in mind there is that because Bitcoin is a legal tender, legal currency in El Salvador, to me, that pretty much makes it a legal tender in every country. Because if I wanted to exchange my Canadian dollars for US dollars, I don't pay any tax on that. If I wanted to exchange my Canadian dollars for whatever they use in El Salvador, pesos maybe, I wouldn't pay any exchange on that. So Bitcoin's legal tender in El Salvador, does that not mean that you can exchange Bitcoin with any other currency without any tax consequences? That is definitely not tax advice. That's just my opinion on it. And I think that as Bitcoin progresses, as we move forward with everything, there will be more and more countries. But the key there is that one has accepted it as legal tender. So take that how you want to. But with the securities, one thing you have to keep in mind here with these cryptocurrencies is that they are basically just unregulated securities. None of these are regulated with the SEC. So at any time, if Gary Gensler decides that he wants to come after these cryptocurrencies, he's not going to come to your house and take them from you. What he's going to do is he's going to shut down an exchange that has these cryptocurrencies trading. And when that happens, the value of these cryptocurrencies are going to absolutely tank because you need to have liquidity. You need to have a market for that. And without an exchange, how are people going to buy and sell the cryptocurrencies? The majority of them have zero utility, especially right now. So something to consider there. That's a big part of it, is the commodity versus a security. Not only just for tax implications, but at any given moment, any day, Gensler could come out and say that we're shutting down all of these exchanges because all of these are unregulated. And the value of everything except Bitcoin is going to tank. So keep that in mind. If you're looking into DeFi, if you're looking into swing trading, any given day, one person comes out and says, we're going after all these exchanges. And when you lose the ability to exchange those cryptocurrencies, they pretty much have zero value. Right? It's just logic. It's all just logic. That's what we're using here. I think that's it for today. Maybe not. Robert asks, Blockstream Jade a good choice? You tell me. I've never used it. I bought a Trezor years ago. That's where I found some Bitcoin Cash the other day. But I bought a Trezor a couple years ago, and what happened with that? I heard a couple bad things about it, and then I found the cold card, and so I spent $450 buying a Trezor. I used it for about a year. Didn't have any issues with it. It worked fine. Very easy to use. But I just don't, when I'm putting that amount of my stuff into something, I want to make sure that it's bulletproof. And to me, cold card is the best option. So I moved everything from Trezor to cold card. And there obviously was some cryptocurrencies that I had on there, including Bitcoin Cash. So I just left those on the Trezor and moved all the Bitcoin to cold card. And then you set up a multi-signature, and then you kind of take all your risk out of it yourself. And there's different ways to do that. That's going to be a big focus on our Living in the Future Patreon show that we do, is talking about the cold card, talking about the passphrase, talking about multi-signature stuff. But everything's a journey. We can't do everything at once. So speaking of that, we are going to jump over to the Patreon here. I have a really good interview that I want to show whoever's going to watch it today. I've never seen this before, and I kind of came across it. It was a video by Vice, who I very much distrust. But within this video, there's about 15 minutes of an interview with this girl that I'd never heard of before. And I was blown away of how well-spoken she was and how knowledgeable she was about Bitcoin. And I think that watching this, we're going to watch it. We're going to talk through a few different things, but having this knowledge, having this information is important, because you're going to be talking to people. If you're the Bitcoin guy or girl in your network, you want to be as well equipped as possible to help people through this transition that's happening. So there's some really good talking points. It's kind of like a debate. There's two kind of guys who are very entrenched in the current system. And then there's her, and they're kind of like attacking her about Bitcoin. And she just basically eats their lunch. So we're going to jump over there right now. We're going to watch that. If you're interested, I fixed the link below for the last couple of weeks. I've had the Patreon link below there, but it didn't actually work because I didn't put HTTP in front of it. So you should be able to now click the description, click the Patreon there, and you can sign up as a 7-day free trial. There's been a few people who've done that the last couple of days. And then if you don't like it, just cancel it. But we're going to be doing these things. This is the third episode this week. I promised one episode a week, and this is the third one this week. So everybody else, I appreciate you more than you know. I love doing these shows. I very much appreciate people showing up every day, and we're going to keep going until we get tired of it. So Bitcoin Well is a Canadian company, ATMs in major urban centers. They just launched in all 50 states. Interesting. I've never heard of them before. Okay, so if you want to watch the show, it's Friday. Got some coffee and Bailey's left. And if not, we'll see first thing Monday morning. Have a great weekend, everybody. And everybody else, we'll see you in about 30 seconds. Bye-bye. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. Almost ended it again.